Good morning, everyone, and welcome. And apologies, we're starting a few minutes late with a few technical glitches, but we're so thrilled to be here with all of you this morning. My name is Jocelyn Forbush. I'm the acting president and CEO for the trustees, and I'm so excited to be here with you, kick off the 45th consecutive Gardeners Gathering. And thank you also for joining us and putting up with our first ever virtual format on what is likely to be a beautiful spring day. But we've got a wonderful program to come, and I know that this morning will help us to kick off the gardening season and to get us into the spring. We are providing translation of this program this morning. So if you'd like to use that service, please look at the bottom of your screen. You'll see an interpretation button with a globe and press that. I also really want to welcome City Council President and incoming Mayor Janey. Thank you so much for being here with us today. I also want to thank Chief Chris Cook, Chief Sheila Dillon, and Chief Marty Martinez, as well as our guest speaker today, Michael Twitty. Just a few notes for anyone who is new to the trustees. We were founded right here in the city of Boston by landscape architect Charles Elliott in 1891. The trustees is the nation's first land preservation and conservation organization. For the last 130 years, our mission has been to protect and to preserve places of historic ecological value in Massachusetts, to share them with the public. This includes everything from the parks, from gardens, like where we find ourselves today, to the beaches, farms, historic homes, to museums, and much more. Our 120 properties are unique and irreplaceable destinations where we welcome over 2 million visitors annually. As an organization, our goal is to connect people to nature around them and inspire them to build a deeper relationship to conservation, to culture, and community. I also want to thank you all for rising to the challenge in this last year of the pandemic and really diligently following the safe gardening protocols that enabled us to keep the community gardens open, providing food access in these times of real need. And I want to share a special shout out to all the volunteer coordinators for making a really successful season possible. I also want to thank to the team efforts that gardens have stayed open every day throughout the season, which is really a spectacular gift for us all, I know. I'm also so pleased to say that we've been able to continue our strategic investments in our community gardens over the past year with support from the city, as well as a recent grant from the Mass Department of Ag Resources that will support our growing capacity at City Natives in Mattapan. This award is in addition to several other foundation grants that allow us to maintain our annual infrastructure needs. Also, in addition to our garden work, I wanted to mention a few other places you'll see us in the city. Our Boston Waterfront Initiative, which is working to rebuild resilient, accessible public open space along our waterfront, has its first park under agreement in a community design process at Pierce Park 3 in East Boston. Also, you'll see our mobile market, which will be operating in this coming spring and summer in a range of neighborhoods around the city to serve fresh vegetables to those in most need. 100% of those CSA and mobile market customers who have signed up with us this year are using SNAP and HIP benefits, and we really look forward to reaching even more families this year. As I close, I really want to thank our remarkable staff who have put this exciting program together. So Vidya, Alex, Jordan, Michelle, Peter, and Annabelle, who I know you'll be hearing from throughout the program. We've been very grateful for Mayor Walsh's dedicated support and leadership over the past 8 years of our community gardens. And we're very grateful and appreciative to President Janey's willingness to participate in this year's event, particularly during a very busy time, I might imagine, of transition for the city. We are looking forward to working with you, President Janey, as you assume the new role leading the city. And so with that, let me welcome Council President Kim Janey and our incoming mayor to kick off our program. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much, Jocelyn, for that introduction, and many thanks to Vidya for your work continuing this Boston tradition. I want to say happy spring and greetings to more than 500 gardeners who are gathered today. Whether you tend a community garden, an urban farm, or a patio flower box in your window, I am delighted to welcome you. As we come together as a community today is a milestone. The Gardeners Gathering is a symbol of hope that better days are ahead, and we certainly need that now. The beautiful new signs of life that arrive each spring are even more meaningful this year. This is truly a time for recovery, reopening, and renewal of our community gardens and public spaces. I want to thank the Trustees of Reservations. They are such a great partner for the City of Boston. They bring our gardening community together with training and support for both ornamental and vegetable gardeners. And through land ownership, they permanently protect 56 community gardens in the City of Boston. Their support is critical for protecting and maintaining green spaces in our city. They also help city residents access healthy produce, and their mobile fresh food market makes healthy choices more affordable and convenient for city residents. And as a gardener myself, and I haven't had a lot of time for gardening lately, but as a gardener myself, I understand community gardens bring so many benefits to our communities. Gardens bring neighbors together with a common goal and provide important access to healthy food. Gardens have an amazing way of sparking joy, something that we all need. And as I prepare to lead the City of Boston in its recovery, reopening, and renewal, I'd like to thank Mayor Walsh for his dedication to our gardens and parks, especially during this pandemic. I also want to acknowledge that I'm joined today by Sheila Dillon, who is the Chief of Housing and Director of Neighborhood Development, and Chief Cook, who leads the Environment, Energy, and Open Space. And Chief Marty Martinez, I believe, is here, who's Chief of Health and Human Services. I will share some of these ways that department heads have partnered with the trustees to make our city service infrastructure even stronger over the past year. But first, I just want to thank you, our urban gardeners. You have risen to the challenge of this difficult time. As we all seek to find joy in our daily lives, you have safely kept our gardens open. Our public parks are also an important source of joy. They benefit public health, combat climate change, and create more equitable communities. Building resilient parks on our waterfront protects us from the threat of sea level rise and creates space where all Bostonians feel welcome. And the trustees understand this. They've begun hard work of building one waterfront park, Pierce Park 3, and this project in East Boston will help combat climate change and build a more resilient Boston. We are investing in parks all across our city with support from the Community Preservation Act. And the CPA staff works hard to encourage applications from every single neighborhood. And since 2018, the Community Preservation Act has funded 198 projects, awarding over $92 million. A total of 67 projects were recommended in FY21, and of the 25.5 million awarded this year, 6.2 million will go to open space and recreation projects. And this includes potential funding for the trustees' wonderful Winthrop Street Community Garden right in my own neighborhood. The City of Boston's partnership with trustees has had a positive impact across all of our communities. And under the leadership of Chief Cook, the Mayor's Office of New Urban Mechanics and the trustees have partnered on the Community Grown series. This work connects gardens with local artists, leveraging art and food to strengthen our neighborhoods. In other work, D&D, a grassroots program, has 60 acres of land, and under Chief Sheila Dillon, we've distributed about 2.5 million over the last 7 years to create and improve gardens and open space. We also sold land at a minimal price to create 25 new gardens, farms, and other open spaces. In January, we launched capital funding from the Mayor's Youth Council, and this will be ongoing funding opportunity for up to $100,000 per project. These awards will support new farms and garden sites that make local food accessible to youth in Roxbury, Dorchester, and Mattapan. In addition, Chief Martinez and the Food Access Council are working together with groups all across Boston to end hunger in our city by 2030. Vidya from the trustee staff has been an important partner at the table on these important issues. Stewarding our open spaces and supporting people to grow their own food is an integral part of the recovery, reopening, and renewal of our city. And to all gathered today who are working to support food culture and open space in Boston, I thank you from the bottom of my heart. It is now my pleasure to present this year's Community Garden Awards. This year's honorees are truly, truly inspiring. First, we have Rookie Garden of the Year, Ellington Street Garden, the Ellington Street Community Food Forest Garden in Dorchester. This garden began with dreams of growing healthy food, hosting workshops, and having outdoor space to socialize and build community. These dreams were realized by neighbors connecting with neighbors to make positive change. In 2011, ACE, which is Alternatives for Community and Environment, helped residents create a garden in vacant lots on Ellington Street. They built raised beds and provided seedlings to longtime neighbors, including Mrs. Thelma McLaurin, Miss Estella Mabry, and Miss Gloria Harris, and Mrs. Virginia Saunders. Another neighbor and master gardener named Arthur Uter connected ACE to Orion Kriegman and Emily Haslett, a Boston Food Forest Coalition, to get even more residents involved. Their outreach engaged another resident in Master Garden, Carolyn McLee, who is now the lead steward for the garden. In recent years, the Ellington Street Community Food Forest. In recent years, this garden has installed a beautiful gazebo and added handicap access, which is very important. Other improvements include a medical mandala and a watershed and magnificent mosaic by local artist Zariah Truth, who's a dear friend. And gardeners have planted over 45 shrubs and trees on the site. They've also added 10 more raised beds for seniors and families to enjoy. And true to the original vision for the garden, over 300 pounds of food has been donated to residents and local nonprofits. Thanks to the cooperative spirit of the entire neighborhood, the Ellington Street Community Food Forest Garden has blossomed. Let's meet the winners. Our next award for Most Valuable Gardener goes to Robin Saunders of Nightingale Garden in Dorchester. Robin is an active gardener at the Nightingale Community Garden and co-chair of the Dudley Greenhouse Advisory Committee. The Dudley Greenhouse is right in my neighborhood, so excited about that. She's also a board member of the Dorchester Food Co-op. Robin is known as an excellent gardener who readily shares her ideas and her supplies. Her generosity has included everything from Y splitters for faucets to praying mantis pods placed elegantly around the garden. An active member of the Dudley Greenhouse community, Robin has organized fundraisers and been a constant champion for resident leadership. Robin centers racial, economic, and environmental justice in all of her work. Her participation in the food co-op advocacy has reached regional and national levels. Her experience as a community garden, a neighborhood activist, and a marketing professional have made Robin Saunders this year's most valuable gardener. Let's hear from her now.
Oh, well, good morning, everyone. Thank you, City President Janie, and also want to thank the trustees, and congratulations to Ellington Street Gardeners. That was amazing work you did and are continue to do. Just quickly, thank you for this award. I want to acknowledge the original peoples on the land on which we work and we all live currently. And as far as this award, I am gracious of this, and it's a pleasure to be on the garden and to work with so many people from the community, especially to learn and hear from all of their stories and their families' traditions and their people's culture, because we all share and are part of the community for which we continue this food access work. So I love to be, especially, I think I'm on plot number 1, which is right by the street there. So always have communications and conversations with people as they're passing by the Nightingale Street Garden. So it is a pleasure to be on the land there working with the community. This is the award, so thank you very much. And just want to remind everyone that it's a continuous learning process and gardening is available to everyone.
Thank you so much, Robin. President Janie, back to you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Robin. This year's Hall of Fame Garden Award goes to Leland Community Garden in Jamaica Plain. The Leland Community Garden sits on what used to be known as the lots. In the early 1980s, these 3 vacant lots that covered 11,500 square feet had become a dumping ground. Broken glass, garbage, and illegal activity made the site a place to avoid. Then nearby neighbors decided to organize and address the problem. They hosted cleanup days, picnics, and discussed possible uses for the space. In 1983, the Boston Natural Areas Fund, which later merged into the Trustees Reservation, purchased the lots, ensuring that they would remain green and open space to the public forever. In 1989, the garden received $25,000 from the City of Boston Grassroots Program. With input from neighbors, they hired a local landscape architect to design the garden as an open community space rather than individual plots. In 1991, the Leland Street Community Garden received the prestigious Community Gardener of the Year award from the Massachusetts Horticultural Society. And since then, the garden has been sustained by workdays and monthly meetings, bringing joy to neighbors and contributing to a sense of community. The garden recently changed its name from the Leland Street Community Garden to the Leland Street Cooperative Garden. The new name is a reminder that this beautiful communal space does not have individual plots. And after nearly 40 years, neighbors still continue to come together on Leland Street for workdays, potlucks, concerts, and more. Let's hear from this year's Hall of Fame winner.
You can talk.
Oh, hello, I'm Kathleen Robinson, and this is Dino Lencione. We're both here in the 1980s when the neighbors here at Leland Street decided to clean up the lots and create a garden. Over the years, it's been amazing. The neighborhood has changed a lot, and many hundreds of people really have come and gone, but the community that's been created, all that during all those years, whether people like Dino and I had lived here for 35, 40 years or more, and other people had only lived here for a couple of years, we built community together, and we always found joy working together in the garden and growing food for everybody. So thank you very much for the award, and We're going to keep on gardening.
Thank you, thank you.
Yay for you guys. Congratulations. Very lovely to see you up there again. Thank you for joining.
And before we conclude, let's also hear from Carolyn, the Rookie of the Year.
Yep, they won't allow my video to be open, so I'm gonna talk on the mic. It says you cannot start your video. Okay, great. I wanna thank you for this award. We, the stewards of Ellington Street Community Food Forest Garden, wanna thank you for this award. And this has been a labor of love, getting started in 2006 with the efforts of ACE, having all these youth come out and really help build this guerrilla style garden at first, without having the youth being a part of this. And making this come true to life has been a major part of why we're doing the work that we do. So I also want to thank the Boston Food Forest Coalition for knocking on my door and ACE knocking on the door and helping us with this community garden. But this cannot be this would not be true without having some people in the community, some lead stewards like Mrs. Stella, Mrs. Thelma, Mrs. Gloria, Emily Haskell, all who have been a strong part of really building a trash needle ridden garden into a beautiful space where we can see butterflies, 3 different types of bees. It's a safe place for children and family to come and grow and learn and play. And so I want to say thank you very much for this award. I'm a little nervous. And here's the award that we have. We'll probably be out there today. And we're going to keep doing the good work that we're doing, building community and changing lives. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Carolyn. And you summed it up very nicely. Gardens play such an important part in the fabric of all of our lives. And I'm just grateful to this organization and want to say congratulations again to all of the winners or this year's recipients of the awards. You guys are doing amazing work, and I'm just grateful to participate and support your efforts. So thank you again for the opportunity, and congratulations again to all of the awardees. Thank you.
Thank you, President Janey. Jocelyn, if we can have you back.
Hi, everyone. I want to add my congratulations to all the awardees, Ellington Street Gardeners, Robin, Leland Community Gardeners. It's so exciting to hear the stories. As a community gardener myself over in Jamaica Plain, I really recognize how rewarding these gardens are to our lives every day, but also what it takes to keep these places thriving. So thank you all for your inspiration and for inspiring us in your commitment to our places, to the gardens, and to the communities. So congratulations. I also want to thank President Kim Janey for being with us here today and sharing in the celebration. And we are really looking forward to partnering with her and the city under her leadership. So thank you, President Janey.
Thanks, Jocelyn. At this point, I would like to introduce Michelle De Lima, our engagement manager. She will do some quick pop-ups, and then we can have our guest speaker, Michael Twitty, on. A huge congratulations to everyone for their awards. I wish we were in person and give you a loud cheer, but we will have to do with this virtual platform for this year. So Michelle, all yours.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much, President Janey, Jocelyn, and of course, our esteemed awardees. That was really wonderful to hear from you all. Now it is my great pleasure to introduce our special guest speaker, Michael W. Twitty. I'm just going to tell you a little bit about Michael and then let him speak for himself. So Michael Twitty is a groundbreaking food storyteller. He's a food writer, independent scholar, and culinary historian who has made it his life's work to document African-American foodways and their legacy in the food culture of the American South. Through recipes, stories, and seeds, Michael Twitty offers an untold perspective on this nation's past that can help all of us better understand the present. Michael Twitty has appeared on Bizarre Foods America, Many Rivers to Cross, and most recently, Taste the Nation with Padma Lakshmi. His first publication, The Cooking Gene, won the 2018 James Beard Award for Best Writing, as well as the Book of the Year, making him the first Black author so awarded. His next book, Rice, became available through UNC Press this month. Kosher Soul will be out in 2022. Michael has a hit spice line based on The Cooking Gene and a recent special guest appearance on Michelle Obama's Waffles and Mochi on Netflix. We are delighted to welcome Michael Twitty to the Gardeners Gathering. Oops, sorry, I lost my notes, you guys. Joining him in conversation today is our own Trustees Boston Community Gardens, Annabelle Rabia, who is a grower, garden educator, and also a chef who draws inspiration from her Iraqi Jewish heritage. As their conversation proceeds and during the Q&A at the end, I encourage you all to submit questions in the chat or in the Q&A, and I will present them to them. So without further ado, please take it away, Michael and Annabelle.
Good morning. How are you?
Good. It's such a pleasure to be with you today. I've followed your work for so long, and it feels surreal. And I know there's so many people that are so excited.
I want to wish you a Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Mahaba, all the good stuff.
So yeah, to start us off, I know we talked a little bit about what we were going to talk about today, but my first question for you is how do community gardens fit into the work of culinary justice and community healing?
Well, I think the first thing people need to understand is that we're the original community gardeners, you know, Africans in America and Native American folk. But I say that because when enslaved people were in urban settings, you know, like a Boston. I mean, you know, my work is predominantly focused on tracing these legacies in the American South, but we have to remember that Boston had a lot of enslaved people as an early urban center, as also as part of the slave trade, the transatlantic slave trade. But it was also the case that enslaved folks were and free people of color demanded access to land. Now, the two things that were the most important to them were a place to bury their folks when they passed on, and the place to grow food and to work with the land, even within cities. And as we both know, early American cities through the Reconstruction period, maybe it's in the South to the Great Depression, were fairly rural. They weren't just strictly industrial urban spaces. So the fact that history is there, and the Victory Garden history is there as well, means that we have a deep legacy in terms of the importance of making sure there is green space where people can cultivate, where people can acquire healthy, nutritious food by their own volition, by their own agency and ownership. And so that's something that is so not only particular to us, but as part of our legacy, I think, in the history of these institutions. And let's face it, community gardens bring people together. Intergenerational learning occurs. You know, interethnic learning occurs. We learn about each other on multiple intersectional ways. The aim of culinary justice, as opposed to food justice is about access to healthy, nutritional food as a human right. Culinary justice is about the knowledge behind the preparation of that food and the empowerment that it brings communities, okay? So I remember the first time I was like formulating all this stuff and working at it, I was at Swarthmore in Pennsylvania. And this young sister was like, who had graduated from there, who was a food activist, was said to me, she said, well, you know, it's rather elitist to talk of talk of culinary justice. Well, you need food justice. And I said, my sister, if all you have is rice and beans and hijack your rice and beans and use power, platform, and privilege to take that rice and beans recipe and the value of it out of your hands, you do need culinary justice, because culinary justice is about, restoring the value and the impact, the power to otherized, marginalized, and oppressed communities. Was when you are othered, when you are marginalized, when you are oppressed, the greatest form of your cultural capital is how you survive your oppression. And as we both know, a lot of times that comes out in the form of creative acts of social justice, moral suasion, political activism, and artistic and aesthetic creativity. And that includes food. And if those things are somehow taken out of context, desacralized in essence, decontextualized and deplatformed, then where's your power? So all these things connect. I mean, you have to have spaces. Gardens for us have always been ecosystems of resistance. And I think that's one of the more critical aspects. I mean, you could, everybody, I guess I've been hit with a lot of universalisms, which kind of drive me crazy, Annabelle, because, like somebody will say, well, everybody gardens. Yeah, but your garden doesn't tell the same story as mine. And that's okay. It can tell different stories. And that's beautiful. That's important. But it's also an issue of justice shalt thou pursue is our tradition, right? Tidof nafshi. I got that a little bit backward because I'm a little bit hazy because it's my birthday morning. So I've run
Happy birthday.
Thank you.
Wow, it's so casual. Wow, what an honor we're here.
But I had to be here for you guys because I love you.
So fortuitous.
Yes.
That's great. That's great. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No. I'm actually.
I feel like the diversity within, if you try to erase that, then you're erasing so much of like what a garden can offer. And
Right.
I remember you were talking about that idea of a multicultural democracy and how, that's something that we want to build in a more ideal society. And I'm wondering like what you think the steps we need to take to get to that place, and how we can actually uplift each other and really learn from each other without maybe, what's the word? Just taking little tokenisms of each other.
Yeah. I was just on a call with Australia, and there was like a really big, like serious name for like a day that they had for like you're reconciling with their history and also with the diversity and trying to make Australia a better place. And the interviewer said that it was blandly changed to Harmony Day. And Harmony Day, they just bring, whatever ethnic food or something from their community as stereotypical as possible to like a potluck or to a school or to whatever, or to the office. And she said, basically, this is not dealing with being a colonial settler nation. This is not dealing with the class issues in Australia. It's not dealing with the problems of dealing with Indigenous people and respecting land rights and dealing with the fact that Australia has a history of racist immigration policies. It's not dealing with any of that because it's just kumbaya, I think that one of the things I've learned from doing gardens in the past and sort of bringing people together. I remember the moment that we did a garden that was to honor Elizabeth Lee, who was a Quaker. And that, by the way, this story is not as simple as you think when I say the word Quaker. Like, she had a family that some of whom held enslaved people in bondage here in Maryland. And they're definitely in her cookbook, there were definitely, hints of, the fact that there's a lot of power and privilege in her life, even though she was a Quaker. But we did the garden based on the foods in her cookbook. So she says salsified. She says okra, all that. And also some of the historical crops. And that's how we constructed this garden. And I remember when the garden was put in, we had different waves of volunteers, one of which was a group of teenagers who were from Central and South America. you know, and it was fun because they were eager. To them, the connection to the land was like really serious and important. But it was funny because I had to discourage them from planting all the seeds like potatoes and oca and other things, like because the Peruvians in particular, they were like, no, it has to go like way in the ground. And I'm like, no, this is not Peru. This is okay. It's I appreciate this ancient knowledge you bring to this, but you know, the potatoes they planted came out the best potatoes I've ever seen. But they were trying to plant the okra seeds like 10 feet deep. I was like, no, okay, guys, come on. But it was so much fun and we had a good time. And it was like I felt like I was finally getting to know, you know, apart from growing up and going to school with people who were very diverse and having a large Latinx population, I felt like I was getting to know this younger generation. And they were so excited. And that's the problem, Annabelle. We have a multicultural society where people do not feel they need to take responsibility for living in community with each other. You know, I mean, we don't make it a priority to know one another. And you can't do that. You can't, you know, I'm sure people look at you funny when they say, oh, you're Jewish, but you're from Iraqi heritage. What's going on with that? I thought all Jews were Polish, you know, Ashkenazi. What is someone who might be perceived as Middle Eastern brown telling me anything about? That's where we started. And I'm sure you're like, wait a minute, hold up.
We're the original.
We're the original.
Yeah.
Abraham and Sarah look more like you two of us than they did like the other folks, right? And it's that's the, you know, if you're going to be a responsible member of a multicultural society, of a multicultural democracy, you have to know more about your neighbor than just, you know, they eat this. And sometimes, a lot of times when we say they eat this, especially when it comes to, you know, the big three, Italian, Chinese, Mexican, you're already wrong. You're already wrong. That stuff, that fast whatever combo stuff, which all due respect as a food person, I have to respect it as a viable part of American culture and as a viable part of those diaspora cultures, is not the everyday food, is not the food from day to day. It doesn't have the meaning, doesn't have the context. You know, that's like, you know how in real estate they say location. Well, this is all about context. And it's about the importance of knowing the history. So for me, the garden part, you know, I will tell my Irish Bostoners that we actually grew the lumper potato, and the potato that drove the potato famine, and people were fascinated. They said this is the actual variety that started the potato famine that brought my ancestors to America. And I said, yep, that's it. And it's like, it looks so innocuous. And I said, that's the point. That's the point of seeing these heirlooms, seeing these new varieties, seeing these varieties from other places, to understand. One of my friends is a teacher at Tidwell Friends and in DC, and her father brought and developed a unique variety of mango in Florida where they were living, because he was from Vietnam. And it was all about, so that mango tells a story, right, of what it really meant to come to America in that time period from Vietnam, who came, why they were here, what challenges they faced. He faced a lot of racism, and a lot of Vietnamese went to the South and went to the seafood industry. That's why there's a Viet Cajun cuisine. That's who they were interacting with, but there was a lot of racism against Vietnamese immigrants there. And so they had to deal with that. And so the mango was his way of ameliorating that pain, those issues. And to this day, he has this beautiful mango variety he's developed. But that's why we do this. You know, we use food and we use gardening, we use working through in processes to help us really understand and respect each other. Let me do this little spiel. We are blessed to be happily contaminated with each other.
I love that.
In a multicultural society, we're blessed to be, because we don't have to do all the work that other people did for the excitement of being in community with different human beings that break up the monotony, right? Which is nothing against homogeneous communities. It just means that, you know, every now and then you need a break. Every now and then you need variety. And we've had a past couple of years, we've had the former guy did the best he could at trying to destroy what the only thing that gives this country hope, which is, the fact that we have human beings from all over the planet trying to not only survive and succeed, but also help each other, teach each other, learn from each other. We're nothing without those layers of knowledge, those layers of experience, those layers of being at each other's feet and with open ears. And so the bottom line is, if you are not living in a multicultural society and appreciating it and respecting that and trying to learn from it and respecting and loving your neighbors and protecting our neighbors. I mean, I'm not going to say anything about the horrific stuff that's been going on. But I am in the sense of how many singular incidents directed at particular communities does it take for us to understand that our children need to know about each other? How many targeted incidents is it going to take at different communities, and also the intersection between communities, and particularly violence against women, for this society to grow up and learn and change? So the bottom line is on that question is, if you are not doing your best to respect and be a responsible part of a multicultural society and learn about your neighbors and also educate people about your background and do your best, then you are forfeiting the beauty and the advantage of being in this America. You're just saying, I don't want it, the greatest gift we could receive. Because that way the whole globe is here and we have to respect the whole globe. My 2 cents, Annabelle.
Yeah, it's interesting. You just said that idea of it being kind of a two-way street, that we also have a responsibility to share our stories. Yeah, I'm thinking also just about the benefits that you have, not just about, I feel like there are very clear benefits to learning about your own history and the service you've done with the cooking gene and a lot of your history work in uplifting like former enslaved people, African heritage people, and the American story and their history. But I'm thinking, I saw this quote and I just wrote it down from your Instagram, which if anyone hasn't seen, the Cooking Gene Instagram is a really great source of a lot of information and updated recipes and just a lot of great content. So definitely check it out. But you said, so talking about, African foodways as they've come to the Americas, these food heritage tell us how we become American, along with the heritage we share as a result from tasting each other's food and becoming a part of each other's culture. And then you said, this isn't just about me, this is about you and however you relate to the African contribution to American food culture and life. And that was super resonant just as a non-African heritage person, and how much learning about that history enriched my concept of the US and its history. And like you're saying, just like how mutually beneficial it is to know the full story and all the stories that we are interacting with, whether we know it or not. If maybe it's just the surface level international potluck, like how do we get deeper into those conversations? I guess, I don't know if you could speak on that, or even just give some examples. I know we were so excited about some of the, your story about the fish pepper that we heard in a podcast was really why we wanted to bring you in, just or thought about that connection. So I guess speaking to that concept of how we delve in and maybe some of your direct work on that.
Sure. So, the fish pepper is interesting because I met the fish pepper at a local living history site, and it was being sold as part of they would do like propagated plants, and they would sell them as part of their fundraising effort. And I saw this beautiful pepper, and it was variegated, and it was different colors, and the label said the Thai fish pepper. I'm like, you don't look Thai to me, but come on, let's go home, let's talk about this. So I brought it back and I planted it and it was really lovely. And here I am interacting with this pepper, and I'm opening up my books. And next thing I know, I found out that fish pepper was decidedly not Thai, which would have been great if it was, but it was actually from, African American Chesapeake Bay culture, which is what I'm living in, right? And I'm just like, wow. And so I reached out to William Boyce Weaver, who was one of the folks who helped get it out into the world. And I'm doing this research and this homework, and it led me on this trail that was just like, there's so many things that come from our background that just the stories don't get told. And so I made it my goal to sort of like keep cheering for this pepper until it reached the point where like local farmers were growing it, and Spike Jurda has given me credit for like popularizing and making its importance known in the Chesapeake region. He runs several very high-end local focused restaurants in Baltimore and in DC, and has become a big player. And one of the things that he did was he had this popular restaurant, and he got Denzel Mitchell, now a friend of mine, who was an African-American farmer in Baltimore, who owns 5 Seeds Farm, which brings in all these kids in the community to do the work and get paid and go to the farmers market. So the whole cycle, right? Mm-hmm. The idea that you have scholarship by a person of color, a person of color who's the farmer, and in a whole network of people, diverse people who go to the farmers market and other places. And then Spike at his beautiful restaurant, Woodbury Kitchen, among other places, he made the fish pepper the only hot sauce. So it was like, no, you're not going to come here and have Tabasco somewhere else. We're going to have something that tells a story about our region. So we can talk about Frederick Douglass and Harriet Tubman. So we can talk about the Black caterers of Baltimore. So we can talk about the fishermen, oystermen. So we can talk about the way that all these flavors work together. And I'd never forget when I went to Wisconsin many years ago, and about 8 years ago, Madison, the most beautiful, one of the best farmers markets, surprisingly, in the country, is in Madison, Wisconsin. Just incredible. It's incredible. It's huge, and it's so diverse. This woman was selling peppers, and I went up to her with my little group from my hosting me from the university. And I looked at, it's funny, I looked at the pepper and I said, oh, look at these. These are really good. Good. And she opens her mouth and she goes, well, this African-American culinary historian named Michael Twitty. And when I told her that I was Michael Twitty, she guffawed and she hugged me. And it was a very nice moment.
That's so beautiful.
These things tell stories, and it's why it's so important. When I first started doing this, Annabelle, I remember this guy wrote me, and he wasn't infelicitous. He was just a little bit, I think it's kind of in his world, his bubble. And he said to me, older white gentleman, he said to me, all this history and all these stories are great, but it's about the food, man. So basically, he was trying to tell me you should be like every other food blogger, every other food writer. And, wax endlessly about what's already been waxed endlessly about the food and the ingredients and techniques. And I understand that, but there's millions of those on the internet. Yeah. Internets. If you really want that, Google it. But the issue here is that there's the stories that we're trying to tell. Remind me, my brain is kind of asleep. Tabit, right? So just, which I ate 3 weeks ago. It's like so explain what tabit is, first of all, for the folks out there.
Yeah, so I mean, I always say that Iraqi Jewish food is really just Iraqi food. It's so overlapped. I mean, it's just so rooted in its place. But tabit is perhaps the one truly Jewish dish because it's made centered around the Sabbath. So you aren't supposed to work on Saturday or cook anything. So the night before, you have a giant pot full of rice, and in the pot of rice is a whole chicken, and it's spiced with so many delicious things like cinnamon and
Saffron.
cloves. So spices that in this part of the world you'd think of as dessert spices, but are definitely savory spices in Iraq. And then you cook it all night, and traditionally over the coals of a fire. And you actually put some eggs on top that get steamed. And because it cooks so long, when you flip it over, there's this caramelized burnt rice called hakaka, and it's like a cake. But it's very dramatic. You don't know if it's actually going to stay together or not, if you got the heat right. And so, yeah, it's a pretty storyful dish. I mean, yeah, it was interesting. You were saying like, oh, just the ingredients and the dish itself. And that reminds me so much of fine dining and working as a chef, you know, on a pretty low level, but, you know, there's a lot of push to be, you know, super fine dining and refined. And it seems like such a shame to lose so much of the storytelling, because I think Tabit would taste so much, it wouldn't taste as good if you didn't know the story behind it. And so
Right.
and so yeah, that is something that I wish was more a part of food, and it is, and that is why it feels hard, you know, when some people cook other people's food, or we're all sort of, we are mixing, but there's something lost when the person who has the story isn't cooking it or sharing that. Yeah, and so I am so grateful for the work that you've done, and you know, and you do have this amazing community. It's, you know, especially all these farmers and chefs that you mentioned around the fish pepper, uplifting the story of you know, not only a recipe but a crop that, you know, your people cultivated.
And also and also bringing back to the community an awareness that if there's just one plant, then there's got to be others. And from Denzel's operation, Annabelle, there have been, you know, what's great is that people have, you know, worked with him, and then they go start their own stuff. So now there's like dozens of these operations in the DMV, right? And they're going to start others. I mean, I'm glad that there's a Leah Pennyman. I'm glad that there is a Denzel Mitchell and other folks. I'm glad that they're my folks in Philadelphia, Owen and Taylor. I'm glad we've got all these people, right? We got all these people who are doing these things, who have been seeding this work for I think for 15, 20 years now, which is really crazy. But because it's like, whoa, this is not young anymore. But the fact of the matter is there are new operations every day that are getting off the ground across the country, started by, you know, Black and brown folks and beyond, Indigenous folks and beyond. And it's incredible because this is the part that I really want people to be inspired by. Like, this is the miracle. You know, we were never, you know, you and I were never supposed to be here. I said the same thing to Sean Sherman, the sous chef, Native American food chef activist from the Midwest. So we were never supposed to be here. You know, we as Jews were never supposed to be here. Me as a Black man was never supposed to be here. You as a woman of color from the Middle East, never supposed to be here. Heritage, never supposed to be here. The folks who don't want these voices and don't want our presence, they want our culture. They want our food.
Yeah.
You know, they happily took the number system from 0 to beyond, and happily took the astrolabe that got them to America, and happily took the Shabbat, which became their Saturday, their weekend. They happily took the words of one of our many teachers of the Roman era. I ain't gonna mention his name, but bless him. But you know, all of that stuff, right? And they happily took our soul food and our jazz and our rock and our music and our this and our orature and our moral suasion and civil rights and social justice efforts, but they still don't want us. And that's why we have to do practical things. Gardening, listen, gardening to me, I mentioned the cooking gene, how like there was a time when I was in a very bad relationship and I didn't have much money. And I focused, I mean, I'm not glad for the bad things, but I'm glad that I took the time, and I was forced to take the time to garden. Did a lot of things for me. Number one, it made me more physically active than I can be in the Zoom era. And I was out there, right? It was, you know how gardening is. You first of all, you make a plan and you're excited. You're like, you know, I took whatever little money I had and I put it into buying those seeds. And also getting seeds from people. And then there's a really great program here, Growing DC, that has exploded. I mean, it was huge the first time, but it really has exploded. And they had like a seed thing. All these seed companies will give away year-old seeds or 6-month-old seeds. And they just dump. You know, I walked away with like 40 different types of seeds every time, right? And that little scramble. And then I added to that whatever I could buy, whatever I had saved, whatever friends would give me. And I ate out of that garden for that summer. That was my predominant source of produce and food and seasonality. And it got me out of my allergies. You know, they're not all gone because I have horrible allergies. But I mean, the allergies as far as being outside were gone.
That's super interesting.
Yes, and then of course the outside. And when I was making that garden, I did it very intentionally, and so I was using elements of traditional African and African American spirituality in designing it, and the colors I put out, and the shells, and the sticks, and the bits of cloth. You know, all those things that I've written about a lot and talked about, and it was just like the delayed gratification involved, the patience involved, and then also the deep pain when something didn't grow or got eaten, you know,
Yeah.
all those things, but also sharing with neighbors. I mean, I didn't have a lot, but you know what, when the squash came, you know, the squash is successful, and you have more than enough squash, pumpkins, and all the other nonsense to go around. And so then you have to share, you have to be generous. So there's all these values that I think traditionally come from gardens, but also just are inherent in the process if you are mindful. And that's what we need more of. That, and it's just, that's it.
Yeah, there's so much there, and I think that a lot of people, you know, it was really interesting to work in a garden coordinating role during this pandemic when there was just a newfound explosion of interest in gardening, and it does feel so human to be turning back to something like that. It is inherently healing. And then when you do think of community gardens and how that, you know, forces us at least or allows us to interact with each other, how many opportunities there are. I'm wondering how if someone, you know, is maybe new to this, you've spent so many years delving into this work of I guess reclaiming or going deeper into your own culinary history and heritage, and what advice you would have for someone who's just sort of scratching the surface of that. Because I think just about any of us, whether our histories are more marginalized or not, like have plenty of work to do in that respect. And thinking about what you said earlier about how it's almost our responsibility to share our own histories as much as it is for other people to listen to them.
I know. Though like some people might feel like, well, it's not my job to educate people all the time, and like,
yeah, that's fair.
I understand, but also I'm gonna say this bluntly. It's also something that could save somebody else's life if you do, or deeply impact their life. You know, before we go into the whole exploration thing, I spent 15 years as a Hebrew school teacher. I was it. I was the only Black male
I'm sure
in that scene, and I was right, and I was like, I may have had, I think I had some African American Jewish students across all the congregations that I taught for. It was more than one school, but I guess the point I'm trying to make is that for especially for the majority of the students who were upper middle class or very wealthy, and were in white bubbles, I was the only Black man they ever had to say sir to growing up, or have that kind of like authoritative respect for. And there were times when I didn't feel like educating people I worked with, or the students or the parents. But guess what? Those kids are writing me back now at 25, 27, 32, 35, talking about, after all the stuff we've been through as a nation and things I've seen growing up, I'm glad I had to teach it because I wouldn't have seen it. It's not about Michael Twitty. It's about just having someone there who is willing to speak to those issues, to those students and those kids and say, hold up, nah, I can't let this pass. No, I can't let you say that. No, I have to educate you right now. I have to share with you my story in the hopes that you will grow. And now my kids are jurors. You hear me? Teachers, you hear me? Principals, you hear me? Lawyers, you hear me? Social workers, you hear me? You know, they're doing the kind of things that will impact their relationship, not only their relationship with the Black community, but also with the lives of the African-American folks and Black folks that they deal with. Because you know, what happens when we don't get good lawyers? What happens when we don't get good jurors? What happens when we don't have good teachers who really respect where we're coming from and try to work with us, and principals and social workers, et cetera, and also coworkers who don't know how to deal with us, who don't, you know, what happens when you don't get the promotion because they don't have no Black friends, they don't have to deal with Black people. And you could change Black to women, you could change Black to gay, you could change Black to, you know, Middle Eastern or Latinx or whatever, or Native or whatever, or even for white folks in this country. We don't even say the name, do we? But we have, if we would just solve that problem alone of dealing with class and the way it intersects with region and race, we might not have some of these other issues, if you get my drift. Yeah. So now that I've said that, which I think is important for people here, I want to go walk this back. You have to also educate yourself about your own. Because then we forget that, you know, yes, we have this beautiful multicultural country, but we also have a heavy assimilation. In America, assimilation is not just about becoming part of the whole, it's also part about breaking down, you know, some of those, I don't know, how do I say this? You know how, what do we call it when someone has their immunities? Immunities have been built up over time. You know how we have the little things that our ancestor warnings. Okay, you know what? I ain't dealing with, nope, no sir, not today. Sometimes you lose those immunities sometimes in this culture because you're lulled into this sense of safety. And so you lick the lollipop that fell on the ground, even though you shouldn't have. No 3-second rule on that one. And so for me, learning about yourself and learning about where you come from is it's not just like, oh, that's nice, that's good trivia, oh, that's cute. No, it has a lot to do with helping get back your immunities, helping get back your strengths, helping you reorient yourself and being rooted. Because in this country especially, identity is part of capitalism. And if you don't maintain responsibly and take care of your identity, someone else will give you one. And so I tell people very quickly, I say, you know, the first thing you got to do is you got to actually interrogate your labels. Interrogate where you are right now in this space, with the city that you live in, the area where your parents are, your grandparents, all those concentric circles. And you have to ask the question, you know, why are we here? What are we doing here? What's going on? Who am I? Who are we? And even if you don't have much, I know a lot of people who said to me, well, you know, Michael, I'm adopted, or Michael, I did this, or Michael, I did a DNA test and I got this and and I tell them, I said, well, I don't really have a connection. I tell them that your journey to discover yourself is as valid as somebody who received their stuff from generation to generation. That's how humanity works. You gotta start somewhere. You gotta have something to hold on to. And doing the investigative work is beautiful, because then you get to make your own thing. I mean, I know that you've done this in your journeys. You get to take all these simple parts and still say, you know what? Yes, I come from this going back thousands of years, but here's where I find myself. And now it's my work and my job to somehow coddle together a new chapter. Last thing, my friend Shays Rishon, Black Hasidic rabbi, told me this really cool story in relationship to our own uniqueness as African American Jews. And I'm going to get this wrong, but I'm going to tell you the gist of the story real quick. Basically, this rabbi, there was something lost like something was lost in like a, I don't know, a building was destroyed or something, and they were grieving about this. And the rabbi just says, no, where did you get your stuff from? And it's, well, there are people, our ancestors, our rabbiim. And I said, well, it changed, right? The holiness is in like the recovery and the changing and the morphing and the surviving and the pushing forward as much as it is in the things that are received.
Very
And
Octavia Butler.
yeah, right. Rabbi Octavia Butler said this as well. So yes, fantastic. Mhm.
Yeah, definitely. I think I had a similar experience of just a lot of, I think, a lot of history was erased about Arab Jews or Swana Jews, whatever. As we were inconvenient for a lot of things, and so a lot was lost, and there's a lot of grief around that. But we get to move forward, and you get to take pieces of what you remember, and you're creating something new. And now that is interesting that you thinking about how to create from what we have from the past and where we're at. And at this point, it's interesting. It is, I wonder what you think about that concept of we are influencing each other. And, I might have Iraqi heritage. I also have Russian heritage. And I also, most importantly, been in this country, my whole life, and been influenced by my friends from all these different cultures. And so then what does that mean for like my identity and my culinary heritage and how I grow food? Like, I think people are often thinking, what am I allowed to claim? What am I not allowed to claim? How do you approach that? How do you build a garden? How do you choose what plants to grow? How do you choose what to cook for dinner with all that in mind?
You ask yourself about, I think people hear intersectionality and they just think it's just some academic buzz term, and it certainly has its rootedness in one specific reality and then grows out. You've heard the word intersectionality a lot in the past couple of days in very useful and powerful ways, beyond where it's like it's stretching beyond where it started, right? But in terms of gardening, like I have to ask myself the question, like nana, for example, right?
Mint.
Nana is mint is my brain. Thank you for catching that shift. It's like my grandmother made my paternal grandmother made really great mint iced tea, very, very Southern, very Virginia, very whatever. But also, Te a la menthe, is so North African, right? It's Moroccan. Of course, I've been to synagogue, a lot of Moroccans, and also, Moroccans who are Muslim, and so it's a big part of the culture. Tunisian, Libyan, etc. And then there's mint, as in Southeast Asia. It's like, and mint as in South America. Yerba buena is part of traditional healing. So you see these intersections. You go, this is so exciting because all these cultures are interacting with this plant, and it has so many stories to tell. And it certainly has, walked through my life. And so now we get to talk about what types of the mint and who's going to pull it up when it spreads all over the place, and all these different narratives, right? And it's a challenge, but it's beautiful, right? Because then you get to bring everybody together around a little plant, and then there's other plants, and so then I often will plan gardens based on the culinary output as well as the cultural diversity. So you have to have layers, right? So you make sure you have a space where, okay, we're gonna eat this, we're gonna plant this. What are we gonna preserve once the garden dies back? What are we gonna save? What are we gonna, make ample efforts at? Can we plan menus? Can we also plan shares? Can we plan things that are valuable to people nutritionally? Making sure that we have the more bang for our buck and more resources. How can we really make that squash and that seasonal eating not repetitive and boring for people? That's also important. Just because you grow it and it's fresh does not mean everybody's gonna be used to that cycle. When you can go to the grocery store anytime you want and buy overpriced stuff that's not healthy, it's not organic, not whatever, versus growing it yourself. Seasonal eating is something, it's not, it sounds pretty, until you realize what it takes. I mean, the Italians, I've been to Italy. The Italians are really good at this because they'll eat something and transform it and transform it and transform it. You can't transform it anymore. And then they get sick of it. And then by the time they get sick of it, it's done. But they stay hung in there with it. And so you have to you kind of like work as a community, not be condescending, not be patronizing, but work as a community to inform each other about these new eating practices, or at least that's not new, it's going back to these eating practices everybody had. But beyond that, I mean, you plan, you have to be mindful, not just in what you want to plant, but how it's going to be used, and ethical use as well. I mean, there's so many considerations. And if for those of you who are on this call who are just like, well, I just really like gardening and I just want to get started, but this is a lot of stuff. Yeah, it's a lot of responsibility. But that's what makes it serious and not just a quote unquote hobby. Mm-hmm. And it's something that you learn trial and error. You have to be willing to make mistakes. That is one of the most important things in any wisdom, is the willingness to make mistakes, the willingness to be uncomfortable. Annabelle, we don't want to be uncomfortable anymore with each other. We don't want to make mistakes. I have to make mistakes in order to learn. And I have to make mistakes in order to know the best path and to avoid them. And we just, instead of wanting to make mistakes, we just double down on stupid.
Yeah.
And that's not how it works.
Gardening too. I mean, I think it's really, we do a lot of garden education, but there's so much, you just have to do it and mess up, and then you have a crop that didn't grow that year, and then for next year.
Right. Or something will not grow.
Yeah.
Or something is not as profitable to grow. I did, you know what? I don't think that once I do have a little patch of land again, that I'll be growing a lot of corn or cabbage. First of all, cabbage is fairly cheap, and it attracts a lot of bugs that just destroy it and make it nasty. Totally. I love cabbage though. And a corn, I mean, I might grow a few little stalks, but the squirrel and corn are best friends.
And a bunch of other things.
And deer, right? And raccoons and possum and all this other stuff. And also thieves. So you got.
I've had that experience too, definitely.
Yes, you have to learn and move on.
And I just want to invite anyone to put questions in the Q&A. We will get to that pretty soon. I am wondering what your favorite crops are to grow, if not corn and cabbage.
Peppers are really important to me. Let's see. Greens are special, especially in the fall. Peanuts are a lot of fun. Remember, I don't know about Boston, but I planted a fair share of peanuts in my time.
Our coworker grew peanuts in the greenhouse last season. I think they might still be there. But not really. That's cool though.
Right. And chervil, that's one of my favorite spring herbs. I'm gonna actually get some chervil seed and just kind of like, deck pot it and have a bunch of chervil. It's like the most delicate, beautiful spring herb. I think it's better than parsley, Wow. So yeah, I have so many things. At one point I grew over 65 different plants. Because we were renting in this house, I had this big backyard, all this space, and I just used every bit of space I could get. I mean, I would use those concrete blocks with the holes in them. I would turn that into a garden. You know what I'm saying? Every bucket with holes in it.
Society of plants.
Right.
Cool, chervil. So Michelle, do you have some questions?
Yeah, we have. Thank you so much, by the way. This has been an awesome conversation. I especially really appreciated what you said about your advice for those of us who have sort of lost that intergenerational link, maybe whose parents moved somewhere where they felt they needed to assimilate and really didn't keep that culture. And I always feel like a little fraudulent about going after it. And I appreciated your encouragement. But I wanted to say, so we have a few questions. One person is wondering, oh no, it disappeared, but they asked, let's see if I can find it. they asked basically about what do you see the role, oh, here we go. Michael's comments on mint made me think of the native mint we have here in the Eastern US, mountain mint. So I'm wondering, what might the role of native plants be in the ideas of heritage you have been sharing with us? We don't often talk about native plants in terms of food crops.
Right. So the first thing we have to do is understand, number one, the roles that indigenous plant species used for healing, used for food, play in the cultures around them. And we have to be as respectful of that as we are the fact that we know when we are on native land. We also have to be respectful of harvesting and understand the how endangered, how sustainable, etc. certain plants are. That's also very important. I mean, we've seen what's happened with American ginseng and other plants. People overuse them; they become trendy, and we should also just eliminate that from the get-go. This is not about trendy; it's about being informed about the resources of not only the land, but its first and remaining keepers. And also, just to really broaden our perspective. I mean, I don't think people understand that, like, they're living in spaces that the Wampanoag, that the Powhatan Confederacy, that other people, just like you, I would go to West Africa and always, those who are in the know that everything around you has a use, a purpose, a knowledge, an understanding. Well, we're living that right here, It's just because there's malls and asphalt doesn't change that. We also have to be sensitive to advocating and partnering with indigenous folks for their own rights issues, land access, water access, preserving those spaces, but also demanding that our government and state governments stop making Native people apply for official status. I don't see none of y'all applying for no official status to be who you need to be. So why do Native groups who have been in spaces for years have to pay millions of dollars to be legally recognized? Okay. So all those issues put together, the issues of the social issues that we don't often associate with this kind of awareness, the violence against Native women, the ongoing problem of substance abuse in reservations and in Native urban communities, all that stuff that people don't think matters in terms of recognition of food and healing plants, etc. It all matters. Because remember, all those things impact the very system that maintain those knowledge systems. I mean, it's like not everybody was a healer just because. Certain people were, but what happens when your population is denuded of the very people from whom these customs are passed down? What happens when the children are too busy trying to get running water? They ain't got time for all that. So then then all this stuff ends up in the hands of other folks who may use their power, platform, and privilege to appropriate it. So we have to do both sides of the work. We have to do the social responsible work. And we also have to do the work of amplifying Native voices. I know a lot of Native chefs. Chef Brian in New York, she's amazing. She's Haudenosaunee. She's what we call Iroquois in American English. But she does all this stuff. But it can't just be her or one person. We have to make sure that we empower these communities to be able to do that work. I mean, I remember when James Beard just had the thing for Black and Indigenous chefs, and people were nasty, like, why that's racism. I was like, no, baby. We need every Indigenous voice we can find, because this, that's justice, to give back, to give the access to power, to put those things out there. And not just for us, but for their communities themselves. This isn't about everybody. It's about, so I guess the answer to the question is that you got to do all the work to make sure that these things, that this knowledge is not just out there, but that they're responsibly and respectfully. Yeah.
Great, thank you. I have another question from the crowd here. Somebody is wondering, how do you create the conversation with BIPOC youth who associate gardening and farming with enslavement?
Right, that's the thing, right? I ain't no damn slave. I've heard it more than I care to, you know? And I guess I have to tell you that I sort of like had this stereotype in my own head about, oh, that's what the youth. No, it wasn't. It was the people they came from. Okay, it's because when you immigrate or you are part of the Great Migration, which is another immigration experience, and working the land. I mean, listen, I remember the folks who made that migration talking about hating to chop cotton, hating to worm tobacco, all that stuff, hating to cut cane, and rightly so. It sucks. But then there were other elements. They would talk about, oh, the food was so good from the garden. Da, 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 da. Okay, great. But then the children, you know, my parents' generation, a lot of people were just not into that. They were just like, okay, I don't want to go back to that. That was what my parents and grandparents endured, and they pass it on to their children. So it's less the ignorance of youth than it is just this generational thing, where people are just like, I now I have the convenience of going to a grocery store, but the quality has gone down. The quality of access has gone down. You know, what folks forget is that there was still like a fair amount of movement between North and South that was local, that was personal, not corporate. You know, people coming through your neighborhood selling stuff from the country. There, you know, people, little patches, little gardens, little food, you know, seeds in coffee cans. They forget about neighbors, family bringing food from down south to wherever they were in the Northeast, the Midwest, the West Coast. All these connective tissues that if the people die and the connections aren't maintained, the connective tissue ends. I think one of the most important things that we can do is get BIPOC youth in connection with their elders in garden spaces. Because even though there's always some tension, I do believe that still in our community, we still have that yes, ma'am, yes, sir mentality. That, you know, that Tio and Tia mentality, that Papa mentality. If I can stretch a little bit, that Umi mentality. That says, yeah, I respect you because you're my elder, and I want to take care of you. And sometimes it's bad. Like sometimes it's feeling sorry, but there's still respect there, and it's an opportunity to get that wisdom. Also, just like we have to invest in this a lot of respect. You know what? Everybody tells BIPOC youth, you know, we're like, well, you got to earn respect. You got to work hard, and then maybe then nah. I respect you because, you know what, being born Black and brown, indigenous, etc., and Asian and South Asian and Middle Eastern and Pacific Islander in this culture and Latinx in this culture is an issue. I love you and I care about you because the world is going to be hard on you. And I want you to feel respected and loved and encouraged. There's a difference between that and coddling somebody. And I despair of people giving, especially Black boys, school of hard knocks from day one to the grave and wonder why we die before 50. We don't feel any love. We don't feel any encouragement. We you know, everything you do is a pathology. Everything you do is an issue. Everything you do is wrong. The way you talk, the way you walk, but yet we'll sell your language, your language arts for $1 billion and call it hip hop. We'll take your food. We'll take everything. We'll take your dance, your sexuality, everything from you, your spirituality. And then we're going to leave you a skeleton. No, you know, I got to tell you, I got so tired of that growing up. You were always a knucklehead. You were always an ass. You were never a human boy. You were never to be a man. And then they killed you. Or they encouraged you to kill each other. Or they locked you up. Or you ate or substance abused yourself to death. Love these kids. Talk about how beautiful and who they are for what, that they're beautiful for who they are, for what they are. You know, praise them at every single opportunity. Forget this, this silliness about giving every kid an award. You know what? If you understood how hard it was to be a child of any group in America, but especially these, all that love is like, it's like putting money in a bank. You hear me? And what does money in a bank do? It collects interest and it grows in capital. That's why the gardening thing is so important, because when that plant grows, you sit down with that little black boy or that little brown girl, and you go, like, you did that. We did that together. And they feel a sense of accomplishment and awareness. And then they take the pepper home and they make a sauce with it. So then with their parents and family, then the parents will show up and go, hey, I just thought I work really, I have a lot of hours of work, but I thought maybe today I'd have some time to volunteer. Okay, great. Come join. I mean, there's these organic ways to create emotional security. And just, I as a teacher, I just remember that I had to, especially when I worked with kids who look like me, giving them that sense of love and encouragement and empowerment keeps them alive. That's what kept me alive. I mean, I'm becoming very emotional about this. I'm a 44-year-old Black man as of today. And I'm only here because there were people who said, I don't want you to fall by the wayside. It's hard. It's very hard. And I'm thankful for the things that my daddy taught me and my grandmother taught me that make me rooted. I tell the kids, I'm not woke, I'm rooted. I'm in that soil, I'm in that ground. And I'm thankful for all the different human connections that I found through food and spirituality and other things, through, being LGBT, all of it. Those little points of just like people letting you know that your voice and your spirit is valuable. And that's what we want to do. And we want to feed people. We can do this. We can have, I love the idea of edible, not just community gardens, but edible forests and parks, and creating that kind of community. So yeah, that's it. We have to also take, I don't mean to talk too long about this, but also we have to take our kids out of the mindset that somehow that work is bad. Ron Finley, talk to Ron Finley in LA, the gangster gardener. He says the words, growing food is like growing money. When you reteach our children and our communities that these things are valuable because they add value to the space, they beautify things. You get resources like food and healing out of it, and that this is part of our heritage, and that we were forced into these, industrial urban spaces because we were fleeing oppression, not because we didn't love the land, not because we didn't love nature, not because that's not important part of our culture. All that was, I mean, there's costs, serious costs to those things. And so so we got to encourage them to feel like this is not oppression. This is reparations. This is healing. This is empowerment. This is growth. This is being able to feed yourself. That's the main thing, right? If you can't feed yourself, or your family, what you doing? All that.
Thank you so much. I really loved what you said about the intergenerational component. And I think there is so many opportunities for that, especially in our gardens, and thinking about like building those connections and building those relationships, and making sure people feel loved and making sure that knowledge is being shared.
passed down. I guess there's no other way to do it, right? There's no other way to do it than to actually facilitate those situations where we can pass down our stories.
I know there's a number of other questions.
I mean, I think we're at a great place to stop. I just want to pass along. You can't see it, so you're getting a lot of appreciation, and I think what somebody has put in the chat is pretty perfect way to thank you. So they said, Michael, thank you for sharing your knowledge, humanity, and vulnerability with us. You are a gift, and you are getting a lot of blessings too. And there's someone who's asked a couple times, so I just have to ask, can you tell us about the quilt behind you?
Oh, yeah, sure. So, okay, quick story. So this is an applique cloth from Benin, which is a small country in West Africa between Togo and Nigeria. And it was the heart of the Dahomey Kingdom, which actually had a army that when they fought the French and colonialism in the waning years, like the 1890s into 1900, the French were being fought by not only by their vast army, but by a special group of mercenaries that were all women. Yeah, it was deep. It was deep. So the Fon people, this is their history in cloth. Now, back in the day, you wouldn't have had the dates and numbers and names. You just had the symbols, and the symbols are just like they're like totems. So this king had this symbol, this king had this symbol. This is the queen mother of so and so. That kind of thing. So I bought it in Benin, which all people who go to Benin will buy this or some applique like it. I have appliques from all of them. They're beautiful. Those and the ones in Ghana are beautiful. But here's the deal. So a couple months ago, I'm on Zoom and I'm talking to one of my distant cousins who's also a genetic genealogist. And he says, I want to introduce you to this gentleman who I found on Ancestry. And I was like, okay, great. And he's like, oh, this is your cousin from Benin. And I said, and he's looking at the thing behind me. He goes, wait a minute. That's from my country. I said, yes. And he goes, okay, so we're blood. So you should know that we're both blood related, me and this guy. And so I asked him questions and I go, he's like, where did you get Ouida? And I said, he said the most beautiful thing. He said, we are from Ouida. And he emphasized we, not me and my family, but you and me. Keep in mind, we haven't really been close family for 300 years. My dad's mom's side from Virginia, which means they were a long time ago, like the 1710s or 1720s, is when our mutual ancestor was exiled. So I was talking to him and he goes, yeah, Ouida, where from? I said, I went to Ouida. That's where I got the thing. And so the next thing he says, I said, where do you live? And I said, I live in Maryland. He says, I live in Maryland. And then he says, where do you live? I live in Beltsville. I live in Silver Spring. So those of you who don't know, Beltsville and Silver Spring are like 15 minutes away from each other. And so after the pandemic we've both got our vaccinations, we're promised to meet each other and have a 300-year family reunion. But also he said, the next time you're in Benin, you come with me, you come to the village, you come to your people, we'll eat, we'll celebrate. And so that's what this does for me. It's about bringing people together and, all the different pieces. And I got to tell you too, in particular, I value even the distant DNA. So I have very distant South Asian DNA, and I have very distant, and of course, a trickle Ashkenazi and trickle Sephardi Mizrahi in my DNA. So, and I'm also Jewish, and I'm also a person of color, all the pieces. So I just love being family with y'all, and I really appreciate you for bringing me here and bringing family everybody else. And cousin Saunders, I think if you're an American Virginia Saunders, we might be cousins. That's a lot. But that's also that family, all you Irish folks in Boston, I know we cousins. So, all those pieces. I just want to tell you, thank you guys. This has made my birthday morning.
What a privilege on your birthday, no less. This has been so special. I'm just feeling so grateful that you were able to make it one silver lining to us all being on these Zoom boxes. And
Great.
just to share with everyone, I'm so excited about your upcoming book Race, which is is it also more of a like nonfiction cookbook, or is it recipe?
It's part of the Savor the South series. It has 51, I think, recipes, southern focused rice recipes, but multicultural from across the cultural spectrum of the South. It's out right now at the UNC Press. Kosher Soul comes out next year. God When the Creek Don't Rise. And working on a lot of other projects that are gonna be down the line. But it's I'm finally getting my stride, but I'm hoping that I can go back to the garden soon. That's where I find my life.
With all the, yeah, absolutely.
Thank you so much. That was really such an inspiring conversation. We really are so grateful that you were here to join us. I'm looking forward to continuing the conversation throughout the rest of our conference. We have some workshops this afternoon about culturally important crops. We have a Nipmuc farmer who's going to talk about growing her ancestors' seeds and seed saving, and lots of practical garden skill stuff too, raised bed gardening, and a little bit about mutual aid and community gardens. So lots of stuff. I'll put in a second, I'll put the link to the program in the chat in case anyone doesn't have it handy, so you can see what else is happening this afternoon and Sunday afternoon and Monday evening. But thank you so much. Before we break for our we will have lunch discussions at 12. I just want to hand it over quickly to two of our City of Boston chiefs. We have Chris Cook, the Chief of Energy and Environment, and Sheila Dillon, the Chief of Housing and Neighborhood Development, who are here to say a couple of words. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. That was incredibly moving. Michael and Annabelle, you're a fantastic interviewer, so congratulations. That was really wonderful. I want to thank the trustees for bringing this here today. It's amazing when I hear the words, "I'm not woke, I'm rooted," from Michael. It reminds me that we're in an incredible moment where next week we will have the first female and first Black mayor of the city of Boston, who is rooted here in the city of Boston. And what an extraordinary moment that is for the time, for our city. And it's just an incredible moment. And the fact that Mayor Martin J. Walsh will be leaving Boston, hopefully not for too long, but he'll be leaving Boston to lead an organization as important as the Department of Labor. And when he goes there, he will be bringing all the lessons that he's learned from these community gardens, from these gatherings at the trustees, from parks and open space, and bringing that sense of community with him down to DC, and hopefully spreading some of that love. The other thing I wanted to say is I rarely get the opportunity to publicly acknowledge how special Sheila Dillon is at the Department of Neighborhood Development. And when she's not saving the city by providing affordable housing and literally providing people places to live, she's volunteering in communities. You know, she's making sure that we have a place for homeless shelter for people who are COVID positive. You know, she's ensuring that our communities are livable by building green and open spaces. And so I'm just incredibly grateful at the city to have a partner like Sheila. And then the last thing I wanted to mention was another moment in Michael's speech when he spoke about the holiness is in the recovery, and that quote that he had gotten from the rabbi. And it reminds me that, you know, whatever the God of your understanding or whatever your spirituality, there is holiness and recovery. And that's what we have to do. We have to reshape our relationship with the earth. And that's what you as gardeners do. We are recovering our relationship with the earth from what we have done to cause climate change. And you all building community by telling young people of color or young people from different backgrounds that they are beautiful for just who you are, as Michael said. As you do that in the community and repair our relationship with the earth, certainly that's the path forward to a more equitable society. So I'm very grateful to be here today, very grateful for Michael's words, very grateful for the trustees, and I'll turn it over to my colleague, Sheila.
Thank you, Chris, and thank you, Michael. I joined a little bit late. I was doing something else, but I really did appreciate your words. This is one of my absolute favorite days of the year. The Gardeners Gathering over at Northeastern, and I was trying to think back how many years I have been attending, and I just I love it because it's one, gardeners are like, they're almost like knitters, you know, they're just, there's a certain bar you pass, or they're just good people. They're kind people, they're good people, they're smart people. And so I love being surrounded by folks. I also love it the time of year because it is spring and people can feel, you know, like it's time to get back in our gardens and grow food and plants. And it's just, there's just such a great collective energy. And I'm sad we can't all be together this year. And I know people have been saying that all year, but I really mean it today because it really, these gatherings do me a whole lot of good. I want to acknowledge Chris too. Chris and I have been partners in crime about open space and parks and a better tree canopy and historic preservation. So I really do appreciate his partnership. I think we've been able to accomplish a lot. And I don't know if Shawnee Fletcher is here somewhere, but I do want to acknowledge Shawnee Fletcher, who joined the D&D team, and a lot of you know her from her work in Mattapan. And so we have been, I should have had the number with me, but Shawnee has been disposing of more city land for open space, food forests, community gardens, new urban farms than I have ever seen in my tenure. She's been a force, and obviously listening to you, and sometimes I have to say, Shawnee, can this group, you know, do one more garden? Can they do one more food forest? Can they do? And she assures me that they can, but she's been a force. And so over the last several years, a lot of city property has been, you know, made available for very good open space growth possibilities and programs. So I just want to acknowledge her work. She's been fabulous. And then also, before I go, it is an interesting moment in time. And Council President Kim Janey has asked me several times, and we have given her a presentation a few months ago on open space and community gardens. I'm sure she, you know, mentioned that this morning. She is very interested in this topic, and I know she's going to be looking to strengthen the programs that we have and the gardens that we have, and grow the numbers, especially in neighborhoods that don't have enough. So I'm sort of hopeful for the future and her interest in this work. So thank you to all the gardeners. I'm happy to be here, and look forward to another productive spring and summer. And best of luck.
Thank you so much, Chief Cook and Chief Dillon. We really appreciate your partnership in the community gardens, and, you know, working for a greener city together has been wonderful. We look forward to continuing that, and with the new administration. I do want to say about Shawnee, I couldn't make her show up because she's not a panelist, but she is teaching a workshop. So if anyone is interested in learning about how to start a new community garden or do a major renovation and what resources the city offers, Shawnee will be leading that, and you can find that in the program. Thank you so much, everybody. Hopefully we'll be seeing you for the rest of the event, and take care.